Within the story of Bleach, Kubo has given Ichigo a plethora of different forms and abilities, some great, some not so great, and some iconic, in every sense of the word. Vasto Lorde Ichigo is one such icon to Bleach and manga in general. In this video, I want to go in depth and uncover the deeply laid truths about this form, why it's as iconic as it is, and the role it plays in the larger scheme of Kubo's story. So of course, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. So, before you step into the realm of Kubology, it's important that you understand the identity of White Ichigo and Zangetsu as shown in the final arc of Bleach, and then recontextualizing him back into the earlier events of the story. If you want the full breakdown, please resort to my video on Ichigo Kurisaki's true powers. But in essence, I don't view White Ichigo or Zangetsu, whoever you refer to him now. He should no longer be viewed as a power source aside from Ichigo's own soul reaper powers. White Ichigo is Zangetsu. He is Ichigo's soul reaper powers, and Ichigo is unique in that his Shinigami power sees him take on the abilities of a hollow. And so, Vasto Lorde Ichigo, as much as he is a hollow, is also really just a different way of Ichigo expressing what is in essence his Shinigami powers, because of course, White is Zangetsu. Now for the purposes of this video, I will be referring to the White Zangetsu as White Ichigo, or White for short, just so we're all clear and we know who I'm talking about. Furthermore, what makes White such an immense anomaly is how he fits into the grander scheme of Bleach world building. Kubo explains that hollows are created when pluses who succumb to despair and ill will remain in the human world for extended periods of time without passing on. Eventually, said plus succumbs to the negative energy and is transformed into what we call a hollow. This hollow then makes its way to the place hollows have made their home, called Wakamundo. Within this space, you find that there are certain types of hollows whose hunger goes beyond mere human consumption. These hollows turn on each other. They consume other hollows, and the assimilation gives way to what is called a Menos. And the Menos are divided into three categories. The first is the Gillian, who have no sense of identity, having been born from an accumulation of hollows feeding on each other. No one identity takes precedence, and they all just become mindless. However, among these mindless hordes, if one hollow among them has a sense of self that is great enough, they assume control of the Gillian, and that Gillian turns on other Gillians and consumes them. This process continues until the hollow undergoes evolution and becomes an Ajukas. Now, if this Ajukas retains his sense of identity and continues to survive long enough in Wakamundo, he evolves and becomes what we know as a Vasto Lorde. They sit at the top of the food chain in Wakamundo. How a person becomes a Vasto Lorde is largely unknown since we haven't quite seen it in action. Grimmjow assumed that if he kept on consuming hollows as an Ajukas, he would eventually reach that point. But his subordinates theorized that whatever genetic composition a person needed to become a Vasto Lorde was already predetermined long ago. In other words, those who are considered Vasto Lorde would have always had what it takes to become one, and those who don't have that quality will never reach that point. Toshiro explains that you can identify a Vasto Lorde based on how humanoid they look compared to Ajukas and Gillians. They're less animalistic and more humanoid. What I've described is the standard way of Vasto Lorde creation, but as we know, White wasn't a natural hollow. You see, under normal circumstances, hollows are created from souls of humans. Humans die, their souls linger in the world of the living, they give in to despair, become hollows, go to Wakamundo, and the cycle begins. White, on the other hand, is not born from natural causes. Aizen specifically created White, and he is the first hollow created from the soul of a Shinigami. Think back to Turn Back the Pendulum. Aizen essentially infected the Vizards with some kind of entity that would make them become hollows. So what he failed to do with the Vizards, and by the way, he did fail because Kisuke saved them before they fully hollified. What he failed to do then, he then succeeded in doing to White, albeit by a different method. When you look at chapter 540 of Bleach, Nimaya explains that the way Aizen created White was that he used the souls of many Shinigami, which is technically different from what he did with the Vizards. So now, we've gone from expecting one human soul to become one hollow, and then undergo evolution, to Aizen specifically creating one hollow, born from many Shinigami souls. Alright? White is on a whole different level to any hollow we've met so far. A natural hollow is formed from one human soul. White is formed from many Shinigami souls. Now, when Aizen created White, we noticed that he looked like a hollow. He had that humanoid form that we expect, and honestly, he was definitely a captain level hollow. In other words, he seemed to pass most of the markers we look for in determining if a hollow is Vasto Lorde level, but there's a catch. This is where I will hold my hands up and say this is theoretical. What I'm about to say isn't confirmed, but just hear me out. The white that fought against Isshin passes the Vasto Lorde test from his strength, his size, appearance, and Ryatsu. However, he is missing one important facet of holification. His hollow hole isn't empty, it's filled. In other words, he's not perfect. He's not quite there yet. And one funny thing you'll notice from White Ichigo is that even though we all knew him as a hollow, you take a look at him and you realize, wait a minute, why doesn't he have a hollow hole? White Ichigo doesn't have a hollow hole. Now, it's important to note, when Ichigo transforms on the outside, he gets a hole there, but on the inside, White has never been shown to have a hollow hole. That's just Kubo's way of showing you that White isn't exactly who you think him to be. A little bit of visual foreshadowing that he's not just a hollow, that there's something more to him. Anyway, so White, the imperfect Vasto Lorde, binds to Masaki, enters Ichigo, and assimilates with his Shinigami powers, becoming Zangetsu. From here, you have something special. White Ichigo, once he bonds with Ichigo's Shinigami power, becomes an Arrancar without the use of a Hogyoku. Now stay with me, I know I'm saying crazy things, just stay with me. What Aizen did when he took over Wakamundo is that he took hollows, used the Hogyoku's power on them, and gave them the power to cross over into the realm of the Soul Reapers. Haribel the Vasto Lorde Hollow becomes Haribel the Vasto Lorde Arrancar. Same with Baragon, Stark, and everyone else. You went from being a hollow of a certain level to becoming an Arrancar of a certain level, albeit with an increase in power. White Ichigo did this too, except he didn't utilize the Hogyoku. By binding himself to Ichigo's Soul Reaper powers, he became a natural hybrid combination of hollow and Shinigami powers. White is not a normal hollow. He is a hollow formed from many Shinigami who then binded himself to a Shinigami son and then became one with that son's Shinigami powers. In other words, to me, White passes the Arrancar test. He's a natural Arrancar. It's insane. And so with this, you go through Bleach, and you start to see White evolve. Kubo shows you this evolution through Ichigo's mask and the markings on it. The markings continue to change as White continues to evolve and grow stronger, and during Ichigo's visor training, Ichigo is in Bankai and almost completely transformed. And when you take a look at White in that form, he's burly and he's muscular. He has a tail and he doesn't seem very humanoid at all. He seems very animalistic and Ajukas-like. The evolution, in my opinion, was not complete. And so when Ichigo finally battles Ulquiorra, we see Ulquiorra overwhelm him and blow a hole right through his chest. At that point in time, White resonates with Ichigo's desire to survive and protect Orihime, and he transforms. This time, he's not as big as he was before. He doesn't have a tail, and even his feet aren't as animalistic as before. He genuinely looks humanoid, albeit with a horn and claws and stuff. But now, on every level, he satisfies the Vasto Lorde requirements. His hollow hole is completely empty, he's not animalistic in size, and his power dwarfs even that of a Vasto Lorde Arrancar like Ulquiorra, who was a second release on top of everything. And White completely dominates him. White then goes on to display higher destructive capabilities. His Hierro is better than Ulquiorra's, his Sonido is faster than Ulquiorra's, and his regeneration abilities is also better than Ulquiorra's. And again, Ulquiorra, if you didn't know, is the strongest Espada. He 100% is, and White dwarfs him in power. I'm not just talking strength either. Categorically, qualitatively, White dominates him on every scale. Speed, strength, durability, regeneration, destructive capabilities, every single one. And the cool thing about White is that you have to start to look at him like this. Vasto Lorde Ichigo versus Ulquiorra is not a hollow fighting another hollow. I mean, he is, but he's not. Just work with me here, work with me. He's a hollow literally holding a Zanpakuto in a Shihakusho in Bankai. In fact, I'll take it one step further. In the Thousand Year Blood War arc, Keisuke theorizes that the hollow Resurreccion wasn't stolen by the Quincy, and that Resurreccion is seen as the hollow equivalent to the Bankai. That's the equivalent. We've seen White use Bankai. He just enters his Bankai state and it's still White, just in a different clothing with a different sword and a high increase in power. But after this battle with Ulquiorra and on, it changes. Now, whenever you see White in Bankai form, he looks like he did when he was fighting Ulquiorra. And so to me, the way I like to think about this, and you'll have to forgive me if this is way too out there, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The way I like to think about this is that White is almost pulling from both a Resurreccion and a Bankai. Again, the reason why I say this is that we've seen White use a Bankai. Like, I've seen White in Bankai. We've seen it many times. He remains normal and he just transforms. He just gets a new piece of clothing, his sword changes, but it's still him. We've seen it many times. But after he completes his evolution against Ulquiorra, now when we see him in Bankai, like we did when Ichigo was fighting Tensei Zangetsu to try and learn the final Getsuga Tensho, now when we see him, he looks different. Now he looks like he did when he fought Ulquiorra. Why is that? That's why I don't want to classify it as simply just a Bankai, but it's different. It's almost like it's both a Bankai and a Resurreccion. And again, look, here's one thing I will say. Resurreccion is a hollow ability. It's the hollow equivalent. It's the hollow answer to the Shinigami's Bankai. And just to validate this theory, Kubo was asked this question in Club Outside. I'll post a picture on screen right now. The question says, I believe Tosen can use holification and enter what would be his Resurreccion. I don't want to say Resurrection, I want to say Resurreccion. Can Ichigo and the other Vaistas do this as well? Is it possible that they could use both Bankai and Resurreccion while holified? And Kubo's answer here is, it is possible. And so essentially what you can take from this here, that it is possible for holified beings like the Vaistas, like Ichigo, or like White, to attain a Resurreccion, which to me gives more credence to this theory that what we see White be at that point in time should be perceived as a Resurreccion, because we've seen what White looks like, quote, normally, and we've seen what he looks like, quote, in Bankai, but the form we see there is distinctively different from how we perceived him before, even when he was in Bankai state. And so to me, it makes perfect sense. White is a, quote, natural-born Arrancar inhabiting a Soul Reaper's body, having been born from Soul Reapers. It makes sense to me, alright? But if it doesn't make sense to you, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. We can talk about it some more. And so essentially, to put it all together, White's origin sets him apart from the standard Hollows, and his path to evolution is also completely different. But the end result is a terrifyingly destructive beast who is more powerful than any Espada, and was still operating at this point in time with only a fraction of his true potential, because Old Man Zangetsu was suppressing him. That is how ridiculously overpowered he truly is. And so, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you had fun with it. I hope you learned something. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next Rebirth video. Until the next one, take care guys. Peace out.